Hey y'all, Emu here, and welcome back to another episode of the Talk Emu podcast. Today is an episode I've been excited for. Today I'm going to be talking about my favorite horror games. This is definitely going to be leaning more into survival horror games. Uh, Pretty much all I play, at least in the horror side of things. But I'm going to be running through a list of like 10 of my favorite games and just talk about what I like about them. The basic stuff, normal stuff. Now, there are a lot of games out there that are horror adjacent or have like kind of like creepy thriller kind of elements in them that I wouldn't exactly call a horror game. Um, or there are games that have horror segments in them, but then themselves are not horror games, like Half-Life 2, Halo Combat Evolved, Stars Republic Commando all had like Halo levels, and there are definitely games like Gears of War, Batman Arkham Asylum, and Bioshock that had that like creepy horror vibe, but weren't all on horror games. So I am willing to argue that Bioshock One could be considered a survival horror game. Um, but I'm gonna be talking about like the straight up horror games. My favorite survival horrors. Oh, one of these is not a survival horror. But gonna do what I usually do with these kinds of videos and just rattle through the games, give my thoughts, feelings, share a little bit of the maybe the basic plot and basic elements to the game. At the time of recording this, uh, Resident Evil 9 comes out in 2 days. So that was not exactly why I picked this setting, but it works. Definitely works. I'm very excited for that game to come out. I already have it pre-ordered. Uh, the final Resident Evil game in the mainline series, at least. Uh, Everything coming back to not where it all started exactly, but pretty much a familiar origin, at least for one character or two. Also, is it just me or like the new character kind of looks like Rose? And that kind of threw me off. I don't know why they had the new main character look like Rose. She kind of looks like a cross between like Rose and like the redesign of Ashley Graham. I don't know. It's just funny that why not just have it be Rose and just tie 7 and 8 into two and like have all the Resident Evils come together in one big like joined. Maybe they will. Maybe they will. I shouldn't. I just really hope that it goes out with a bang. You know, but I have faith. They haven't let us down yet. I mean, 5 and 6 were kind of letdowns, but nevertheless, I'm excited in it. And you know what? Let's start with the Resident Evil. Big fan of the Resident Evil series. Been a big fan for 10 years now. I've played through pretty much all the important ones, all the mainline ones, and some of the spin-offs. I never beat Code Veronica, but I did play it, and I know the story. I know what happens. I really wish they'd make a remake of it. Um, I hope that they do. I know that the end of the 4 remake teased a 5 remake, which hopefully they can actually make that game good. But uh, I would really like for them to do a Code Veronica remake and a remake of the first one, which I know it's been remade, but that remake is like 20 years old. So it could use a modern touch up. And I love that first game. I love it so much. Of all the Resident Evil games, my top three are definitely 1, 7, and 8. I love the remake of 2. Remake of 2 is really strong, but 7 is, in my opinion, the most scary. I think that's kind of the genuine consensus. Um, Resident Evil 1 was more unsettling than it was outright terrifying, and 7 is definitely terrifying. And 8 was really cool. 8 combined pretty much elements of every Resident Evil that came before it. Did it in a really, really cool way. Um, I like 4. I know 4 is usually most people's favorite. 4 was monumental for the series. Also kind of led to its temporary downfall. I mean, I feel like the design choices they made in 4, having it be a little more action adventure rather than survival horror, and have it be a little more run and gun, kind of led it to what 5 and 6 were. But um, but 4 also gave us Devil May Cry, and I got the chance to play a good chunk of Resident Evil 4 in VR. That was awesome. I will say, Resident Evil 4 in VR was spectacular. If you ever get the opportunity, I highly recommend it. Um, 5 I was not a fan of. I know a lot of people like 5. I know 5's another one that people love. I don't personally. Mostly, I know a lot of people loved it for its co-op. I played it single player, and for anyone who played it single player, you'll know that it's terrible. I think every game should, if a game offers a single player, it should be viable. It should be perfectly fine to play it through in single player. There should not be a downgraded experience or anything like that. And it definitely is. Sheva's AI is a nightmare. More scary than any game on this list, honestly. Um, and like AI companions were already so much better before Resident Evil 5 came out. Like I brought this up before, like modern day AI, like you look at the companion AI in like Halo 5, Gears of War, um, Resident Evil 5, it's atrocious. But if you look back at games like Half-Life 2 Episode 1 or um, of Star Wars Republic Commando, games like that, the AI was so good and did exactly what it needed to do. So there's really no excuse for it in my book. And 6, I know 6 is the black sheep of the family. Everyone loves to hate on 6, and rightfully so. It's basically just a Michael Bay movie, and not one of the good ones. But um, I like 6 slightly more than 5 for its story. Just for its story. Gameplay's atrocious, and replaying levels is terrible, but the end of Chris's campaign with Pierce's sacrifice, seeing Pierce's character arc throughout that story, the fun relationship between Jake and Sherry, getting to see adult Sherry, which I think she's going to be in this next one. I hope they make at least a reference to Jake. Like, he's a cool character. He's Wesker's son. He should be involved more. Um, and uh, there's definitely some cool things about Resident Evil 6, even if the execution was not done well. Um, Never played the original 2 or 3 or the original 1, but the remakes are all fantastic. I liked the remake of 3. I know that's kind of the black sheep of the remakes, but I really enjoyed it. Although it doesn't hold a candle to two or four or one. And yeah, I think that's enough about Resident Evil. Everyone knows Resident Evil. Like it's the original. Like it's not the first survival horror game. Clock Tower was, I think. And I know like Alone was it Alone in the Dark? Is that the name of that series? It was big around that time. Maybe Alone in the Dark came a little later. I'm not sure. That might have been PS2 era, but uh, definitely a juggernaut in the end. It's like the one horror franchise that's still kicking, still going strong after all these years. Unlike its rival and competitor, who is trying to make a desperate comeback, Silent Hill. So I have only played technically four Silent Hill games, three and a half. Well, I started F. I started to play F. It was cool. I liked the things that I saw. Um, I just I just don't have time for like serious games these days. Or like games that involve too much of my focus and effort. I don't have a lot of time, and when I do have time, I just want to relax and play something mindless. I'd rather play like Outlast Trials, something I can just kind of shut my brain off and run. um, yeah. So Silent Hill. I played two, three, and Homecoming. I played a little bit of four. I played like maybe a quarter of four. I don't know how long the game is. And then I played PT when that came out. Um, I was fortunate enough to know someone who had a PlayStation 4. And Silent Hill 2, I still say Silent Hill 2 is like the best survival horror game. That's pretty unanimously decided in the survival horror community. Um, but Silent Hill 2 is just a really, really good. I will say though, I almost never played Silent Hill 2. I almost never completed it for the same reason a lot of other people don't. The beginning. I know it's supposed to build tension and intrigue. It's just boring, man. Just walking through fog for like 10 minutes. Everything from when you hit start to the getting to the apartment building is pretty bad. It might have built tension and been creepy back in the day, but yeah, no, not these days. However, I will say, once you get to those apartments, oh boy, you're in for a treat, and it is so worth it. Silent Hill 2 is such a great game, such a great survival horror game, and it does have a bonus campaign after you beat it. Remember when games were games and they actually had features built into them without DLC and updates and patches and paying money and microtransactions? Remember when games were just made well and developers actually cared about the audience? uh, Seems so funny these days. Um, I've always been really intrigued by Silent Hill. I love the concept of Silent Hill, and part of the reason I really dislike the later ones is because they mess with their own lore, and I always get so upset when I see Pyramid Head in anything that isn't Silent Hill 2. And I get that they reworked the lore and the story, but to be honest, they just wanted their iconic boogeyman. They just wanted their icon. They wanted their nemesis, their Wesker, their Voldemort. Like their William Afton for the younger people out there. Which obviously Silent Hill came way before that, but you get what I mean. They wanted their icon, their Freddy, their Jason, their Michael. They wanted their iconic mascot character and goes Pyramid Head because he does have an awesome design and is a menacing character. But it just shatters everything. And in the, it all started with the live action movies, and in it's like the live action movie clearly had no idea what it. I feel like it really didn't try to understand the lore or understand how Silent Hill works. Because the whole thing about Silent Hill is that it it invades your mind and it brings out your fears and your regrets and it manifests them into personal demons. And you can see other people's creatures to a degree. Some people can't. A lot of the particulars are a little fuzzy and there are some monsters that are brought about by the host, but they're perceived differently by other people. Like the nurses change for each character who sees them. But um, like the monsters of Silent Hill 2 were all tailored to James. Um, except for at the end when he does see into kind of what the girl sees. I forget her name. The girl that they made ugly in the remakes for no reason. When she wasn't even really attractive to begin with. She was just normal. They made her fat. I don't know. But uh, um, but like James saw like the bed frame, the mutated women in the bed frame with the barbed wire, because it was a reflection of his wife being bedridden, and for those creatures to show up in the movie was so weird because that like why would other people see that unless they were in the same situation as James? And Pyramid Head was James's guilt and rage manifested to punish him, and he even acknowledges it at the end of the game. And they changed the lore so that Pyramid Head is basically just a boogeyman who haunts anyone who's done something bad. But it's still, I don't think that applies in the movie because I don't think those innocent people in the movie were like homicidal maniacs. But, um, but like it was supposed to be a punishment or a subconscious guilt for James murdering his wife, and it just always frustrated me when those monsters showed up in other Silent Hill media because they're supposed to be tailor made to that one specific character. Every character is supposed to see something different. That's what made Silent Hill cool. And they just got rid of it. Like it's not cool anymore. It's not special or fun anymore. It's just a spooky town with fog everywhere. I will say I do like how like Silent Hill F, for the little bit I played of it, they tried to implement the more like kind of skill based combat um that like Homecoming tried to do and failed miserably. I like that F kind of got it right. Though I do miss when survival horror games were about survival and you weren't trapped in every encounter and you actually had to pick your battles and stuff like that. And I miss the fixed camera angles. I don't it's not about like the limits of the time. It's a part of the genre, part of its character, which is why I absolutely adored a little game called Tormented Souls. Here's a nice segue, not just abrupt yelling a new game title. Tormented Souls, which the sequel just came out recently after waiting many years. Haven't beaten it yet. Played a bit of it. Plays just like the first game. And the first game is perfect. Tormented Souls is a love letter to every survival horror game that's come before it. It's got all of it. It's got the fixed camera angles. It's got the puzzles. The puzzles. Remember when survival horror games were about puzzles? It's even got the cheesy voice acting. It is every survival horror game that came before it, and it is perfect. It's just a tribute to the past. Tormented Souls is about a girl that goes to a insane asylum looking for her sister, and turns out her family's wrapped up in some crazy cult, and uh, part of the horror in that the monster design's really cool because it really plays on like the creepiness of like hospitals. Like every monster has some sort of like prosthetic like morphed into it, like crutches and canes and IVs and stuff like that, and it's very disturbing. Something about that kind of like medical gore, the medical horror, has always like creeped me out the most. Like I watched all the Saw movies. Everyone knows Saw movies are, with the exception of the first one, are all about torture and gore and violence and whatnot. And not many parts of Saw made me genuinely wince or get really uncomfortable. Or there are a couple highlight traps here and there, but nothing really got my stomach churning quite like the brain surgery scene in Saw 3. Not even a trap. It is literally just brain surgery. But hearing the drill tap against the skull bone, oh, I can't do it. And the monster designs in Tormented Souls kind of get that same kind of out of me. But great game. I'm gonna go through some like quick small games that I find really fascinating, that I really enjoy and like, that don't get talked about much, and then I'll go back to some of the bigger ones. Found a nifty little game on Xbox called Lamentum. Really liked this game. Lamentum is a 2D pixel art style survival horror game. Basically, picture like Resident Evil 1, but it's literally like 2D. It's not quite top down, but it's not side scroller either. It's like a weird happy medium. Um, Pixel art style, but despite being all pixelated, it's not like bad quality. Like it's an art choice, and it still conveys, or like the monster designs are still grotesque and graphic, and you can still like kind of get skeeved out by it, despite being like pixelated. Um, Tells a great story. It has four different endings, but it also has a bunch of like side characters sprinkled throughout that all have their own little puzzle, kind of like in Dark Souls, where you're going around and you just find a random NPC and you're supposed to like go kill something or find an item and bring it back to them. It's kind of like that. And it's like basically the premise of the game is it takes place during like colonial times, and your wife is dying of an illness and you cannot save her. So in a last ditch attempt, you hear of this man who lives in a manor who has discovered these medical secrets that no one else has, and you take your wife there desperately, and then everything just goes horribly wrong. And despite being clearly inspired by like Resident Evil and Amnesia and other games like that, it does have a lot of Amnesia vibes to it, and like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, stuff like that. But it also, um, I believe it actually directly references Poe's Mask of the Red Death. Also has some Lovecraftian kind of feel to it, some Dracula kind of feel to it. Um, Definitely takes a page from like those older kind of horrors, that era, like the 1800s kind of stuff, but or even older. I don't know, but it just kind of like everyone in that mansion kind of went there seeking the impossible, and much like in Full Metal Alchemist, where Ed and Al try to bring their dead mother back to life, and it all goes horribly awry. You can't fight nature, can't fight change. All my life, all I did was fight. But yeah, people try to mess with fate. They try to get a new hand in life, and they just the road of evil is paved with. I'm gonna start over. The road to evil is paved with pure intentions. That's what I was trying to say. Um, yeah, there was another game that was the same art style. I think it was a different developer, but they were sold as a bundle. Um, called Yuppie Psycho. That game was actually recently covered by Ross Scott on his Game Dungeon series. Um, very different setting, in era, but similar play style with the game. Although I will say, Lamentum has more of a combat focus. Definitely feels more like a Resident Evil type game, but really cool game. Highly recommend it. Really fun. Another game, another survival horror game. Um, kind of harkening back to the old days of like Clock Tower. A game that isn't really well known or ever talked about, and I think it is part to do with the fact that it was like a Switch game originally, but also that it just had a weird controversy surrounding it that kind of, I think, kind of hurt its reputation. In that, and that game is called Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story. I believe that's what it's called. Sense is definitely the main name of the game. Um, I really liked this game. It was not received very well. A lot of people didn't really care for it much. Uh, but I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. It's a 2D side scroller game, very similar to Clock Tower. Um, and it takes place in a cyberpunk setting, but um, you basically go into this like apartment building, and you kind of get taken back in time, and you have to go through these floors, and you have to like quell like demons or like evil spirits, and it's an unsettling game. It does its horror very well. Um, it's very atmospheric and environmental and kind of psychological, and I really really enjoyed that game. Not much else I can say about it other than it's just criminally underrated, my opinion. Next, I'll talk about Alien Isolation. Just wanted to throw this one in there because it's genuinely a good survival horror game. I think everyone knows about this one. This was kind of a breath of fresh air because this was after like survival horror was kind of dead at this point, and this kind of helped revive the genre a little bit. Um, I didn't know anything about the world of Alien going into it. I watched the first movie after playing the game, but even without knowing much about the world, it just felt so cool and stylized. And I played half a dozen sci-fi games, seen seen dozens of sci-fi movies. I've been on so many sci-fi spaceships, but yet the alien world just has such a, and I mean the world of the franchise of Alien, um, just has such a unique and iconic look to it that even without seeing the first movie, the designs were just so iconic looking, even without even knowing. It just felt so unique to that universe, and it was really cool. I feel like you can only make so many different types of spaceships. You can only make so many different sci-fi settings, and it did a good job standing out. But Alien Isolation I definitely plays more with the timeline of the first movie. I don't know too much about how the movies all go together, or how solid of a timeline, like, or of a continuity there is throughout all the movies. Um, but this game definitely references the first one a lot. You play as Ripley's daughter, and you find like text logs from the is it called the Nostromo? Is that the ship in the first movie? But what's really cool about this game is honestly the alien, and how like the alien's always kind of present. Obviously, there's a part of the game where it's not, but once the alien's in play, it's always there. And like you can move around the ship. The ship's like a big open world. You can go throughout it, and you can be on the complete opposite end of the ship. And if you make noise, the alien will find you, like out from nowhere. Like nowhere is safe if you make noise or too much noise. Like it's crazy. Um, and there's other things in the ship you have to watch out for as well. And it did a kind of a good mix of like the you have to hide, can't fight back horror, but then slowly like introducing ways to fight back. It was fun. It was a good game. And it introduced like the having to switch power, like take power from like you have to turn the lights off in order to get the doors to open, and or stuff like that. Like you have to sacrifice some functions for others, which is a feature that ended up being in the remake of Dead Space. Um, Dead Space, of course, if you've listened to my other podcasts, you know I love Dead Space. Dead Space 1 specifically. 2 is good. 2 is good. 3 is okay. Uh, and the remake of 1 was perfect, flawless, better than the original, and that's saying something. Uh, but I love the first game, 100% of it on Xbox 360. Well, I 100% on the Xbox One, but it was a 360. Um, love it and loved the remake. Loved what it added. It kind of the fact that the remake makes the ship, the Ishimura, like a actual like open world, and that you can use the tram as a fast travel system rather than just jumping to the next level. Um, it definitely felt like the remake of Resident of Dead Space took some um, inspiration from Alien Isolation in the best ways possible. Dead Space does follow a similar um, premise, at least starting premise is like Alien, but then again, every horror game and horror movie kind of follows the same formula of like we had a team and they haven't called back in a while. So we're going to send another team to go investigate. And then that team goes and investigates and everything goes horrible. It's the plot to like everything. It's the plot to Resident Evil, Alien, Phantasy Star, uh, uh, all was the Event Horizon, the movie that inspired Dead Space. Dead Space is heavily inspired by a movie called Event Horizon. Uh, great horror movie. One of my favorite horror movies ever. I still see there's still a meme of it that I still see circle around the internet every now and then. The we don't need eyes where we're going, or whatever he says there. Wherever we're going, we don't need eyes. I forget, but um, I like that movie a lot. And Glenn Schofield, the creator of Dead Space, has even said that he basically took the plot of basically the ship being haunted with an entity that makes you hallucinate and go mad and see people from your past and drive everyone insane. It's just that Dead Space then adds the twist that those people then get mutated into a zombie hive mind, similar to the Flood from Halo. But Dead Space 1 just had a great, chilling feel. It had the store system similar to Resident Evil 4. Obviously, the gameplay of Dead Space took a lot of inspiration from Resident Evil 4. A lot of games of the time definitely had that. Definitely took inspiration from that game, from RE4, as like the new flavor of survival horror. Just as how Resident Evil 1 changed the formula from like the Clock Tower days. Um, Another survival horror game that I like a lot is which this game is a roller coaster. This game is crazy to the point where I feel like the even the developers kind of forgot what game they were making halfway through. The Evil Within. Evil Within is a survival horror game that temporarily forgets it's a survival horror game partway through. Kind of becomes a Michael Bay movie for a little bit. Is also kind of The Matrix. This is an all-around great game, fun game. Um, there's a enemy in there that does feel a little Pyramid Head inspired. Uh, Evil Within is basically this crazy story about a detective who is I don't even remember how that game starts, but basically, you're trapped inside the brain of a serial killer, essentially, inside of a lunatic, and everyone's trapped like in a world of his mind. Um, and the game changes a lot as you progress through it. The settings, the elements of it, um, getting a little more shooterish at one point, being more stealthy in the beginning, having more of the survival horror elements, the middle. The game is very confusing. The plot's very confusing the first time around, but all in all, it's a good game, and it has a really cool mansion sequence. Gotta have a cool mansion. Yeah. And the villain's actually pretty sympathetic. Pretty sympathetic villain. Actually, like understood him, felt bad for him. Like there's a part where I was almost kind of rooting for him when you find out like the real like elements of his tragic backstory. I like villains who are genuine characters. I don't like when villains are just villains. Part of why I never really cared for characters like Jason or Freddy or Michael Myers. I think it's why I resonated more with characters like Ghostface and Jigsaw, because they were real people. um, with their own, twisted goals and morals, and whereas the other ones are literally just these like supernatural freaks in cool costumes that just hunt people down and kill them just for the sake of it, pretty much. Um, Same why I don't really care for villains like Nemesis or Safehead in Evil Within. Um, though part of why, as much as Pyramid Head wasn't a character per se, he did represent things about a character. He was an extension of James. But even in other types of media, villains with a more of a deep connection, more of a deep like moral to them. Like as much as I'm not a real big fan of Naruto, really admire characters like Madara and Itachi because they're actually written really well. Light Yagami from Death Note, really well written character. I don't like just the brainless mass slaughter, evil for the sake of evil characters. There's even some characters that are just plain evil, but actually have a personality to them, like Colonel Landa from Inglourious Bastards or Frieza from Dragon Ball, where they are pretty much evil for the sake of evil, but they have a funness to them. Same with like the Joker and the villain from Evil Within. He's definitely a complex character. Definitely has his own motives and reasonings, and I think that really adds to it. If you were just trapped in the mind of a madman, like it would just be like yeah, like of course the world's gonna be crazy. He's crazy. But when you give that character a reason to be crazy, a reason to want death, to want revenge, it makes it feel a little more meaningful. Evil Within 2, didn't care for. Really didn't care for. Didn't like the open world feel of it. Um, yeah, never got far on that one. No, a lot of people really like the second one, but well, I'm more of a straightforward get job done and go home. And I like a nice narrative, not just wandering around and getting killed because I accidentally went to an area I wasn't ready for without knowing. Like Dark Souls. It's just one of my favorite games. And most hated. It's a it's an unhealthy relationship. Um, what's next? All right. Um, Before I get into the last two, which are probably my two favorites, I'm gonna talk about a non-survival horror game. Um, a lot of people are probably gonna shake their heads and roll their eyes when I say this one. Um, Doki Doki Literature Club, one of my favorite horror games. Yes, horror. Sorry, I just spoiled the game for the couple people that don't know about it. I feel like everyone kind of knows at this point. But this game, Doki Doki Literature Club, was marketed. I mean, the Steam tags spoil the surprise. But the game was fully marketed and advertised as a dating simulator visual novel type game. In English, basically, it's a game where it is a like 2D, obviously, and there's just characters on a screen with like a PNG background and a text box, and there's no real dialogue speaking wise, but it's all text, and you're literally just clicking through text, just reading text, and characters will move on the screen, and it's literally a visual novel. um, and the whole premise is, a dating simulator is basically a type of visual novel where A number of girls are presented to you, and you basically go through the game, talking to each one, getting to know them, and making little decisions, and kind of it's basically the romance plot of like a Mass Effect. You're basically picking the character you like and spending more time with them, getting to know them, and um, that a dating simulator, literally. But this one comes with a twist, and that is actually a horrific psychological thriller, a very scary game, but it actually does it in a really cool way that other games don't. I don't know of any other games that do this. They might exist. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know there's a newer game called, I think it's called Me Side. I own it. I haven't played it much because it genuinely scared the crap out of me. Um, and I know Me Side was inspired by Doki Doki Literature Club, or was very similar, but um, but DLC basically what it does is while you're playing the game, which is cool, they found a way to implement this into the console version in a really cool way. I really like that they were able to implement these features into the console version because it's so important. But basically, as you're playing through the game files update, the game files change in your like on your computer, and like it'll like add in these little pictures or notes in there. It is creepy and disturbing, and it like talks to you in the game files, and then like so like you play through the game and the game like ends, but then after it ends, you go back to the main menu and it is horrifically distorted. The characters are jumbled, the music is all like distorted and creepy, and that's not the end of the game. The game is an end when you go back to the title screen. The game ends when you see the credits. You have to keep playing through the game, and it gets more and more twisted and warped and disturbing as you play through, and the characters start breaking, and the game starts breaking, and the files keep like updating, and it's like horrifying. And then it starts to talk to you because it can read your computer files, and it like knows your name and stuff. Like it is a pretty terrifying game. Um, it is really cool. I've never seen anything like that. It definitely like when it came out, it was very original. It always stuck with me. So next, um, one of my all-time favorite horror games. Probably my favorite horror game. You know, I'll always love like the Resident Evil series and all that, but there's one survival horror game in particular that has always just clung to my heart, and that is Outlast. Talked about Outlast in my Xbox One video, but Outlast is for me is just such a fun game. Love the setting of the asylum. It 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 is one of those you can't fight back games, but I I like how it does it because it gives you ways to navigate, with vaulting, and the hiding doesn't feel too annoying, and there's like blocking doors, and it feels like it's more than like Amnesia. I think also the physics of Amnesia kind of killed it for me a little bit, but like I don't know, Amnesia felt like you really couldn't do anything, like you were just dead. Um, Whereas in like Outlast, there are ways to navigate the environment and get around, which obviously Outlast Trials makes more use of that and implements a lot more because it's a multiplayer game. It's like you're going into particular levels, whereas Outlast is a more linear narrative experience. But how the story unfolds and the very unexpected, a very cool ending. And then the DLC, the Whistleblower DLC, oh, it explains some things beforehand, but then also ties into the ending because they do the Half-Life opposing force thing, where if you don't know, Half-Life opposing force starts at the beginning of Half-Life 1, but then Adrian Shepard gets knocked out and wakes up at the end, and opposing force ends after Half-Life 1. Um, and this game is very Outlast Whistleblower is very much the same. And I really wish that they would have done more with the Walrider. Like in the later games, like the whole like what becomes of Miles as the Walrider and Waylon. Like I wish the sequel had tied into that more. And maybe there's hints about it in the Outlast Trial lore. I don't know. It seems like Outlast Trials is just its own lore. Um, but I know that they're not planning an Outlast 4 anytime soon, and that they've just been focusing on Trials. We're kind of getting the Titanfall Apex thing, but um, I do enjoy Outlast Trials. It just doesn't have the same horror feel that the first game has. And I love how just disgusting those games are. They're so visceral and like needlessly horrific. And I love it. I love that they are so willing to push that envelope. So many games seem to just be so scared of being horrific. Like it is genuinely horrific. That's what horror should be. It's not just like it's not like in Resident Evil, like how all the girls have like revealing clothing and stuff like that. Like this is like it's body horror. Like it's disgusting. Outlast uses like blends gore and nudity in a way that is horrific and terrifying, unsettling. And Outlast 2 definitely got more into that. Definitely got more into got into a lot of things. Ugh. um, Outlast 2, I will say, as much as that game really upped the disgusting factor and the nasty factor, the psychological elements in the school, that whole segment, that was a nice touch. Really appreciate that. Kind of broke up the monotony of being in the stupid forest. Um, though for some reason in Outlast 1, though, I never get sick of being in the asylum. Never really needs to break up any monotony. It just nailed it. They just nailed it the first time. So, and Walrider was just that, or Whistleblower was just that perfect little cherry on top. And that cherry's name is Eddie. Um, all right. I saved the best for last. And by that, I mean the one I forgot to talk about in my 360 video that made me upset. And and since I'm not going to be able to talk about Xbox Series X games for a while, that generation's still going on. Found a loophole to talk about Alan Wake and Alan Wake 2. Love the Alan Wake games. Not as big a fan of America. We'll pretend that. But Alan Wake 1 and 2. Great games. Those, and Alan Wake took the survival horror genre in a time where the genre was failing and just added such a fun new mechanic to it. Just refreshed the way that survival horror felt and played. And then of course Alan Wake 2 just pushed the ante like over 9 million. I was gonna say 9,000. That's cringe, but I said it anyway. Um, it pushed it over 9,000. Uh, Alan Wake was so cool when it came out. I remember when it came out. I didn't play it when it first came out because I was too young to buy my own games. But uh, it was so atmospheric and like moody and dramatic. Like it was almost like soap opera with survival horror gameplay. And I remember watching a full playthrough of it on YouTube, like full start to finish, silent walkthrough. And it was just so cool. Excuse me, sorry, it's very late at night. Um, but when I did finally get to play it for the first time, it even though it was like 10 years later at that point, it still felt so unique and fresh. Shining the light, combo with the light, pistol, and flares. It was just it was just a really fun gameplay loop, and the whole mystery of like the pages, that the whole idea that Alan wrote this horror story and now he's living it. And as you find the pages are predicting what's going to happen. It's just a really cool print. The idea that like the lake was like a portal to hell, feeding off of creativity and warping people's creations into demons. Now, of course, some things got retconned when Remedy decided to take put everything into a collective universe, a very like SCP-esque universe where objects are supernatural, cosmic entities trying to get into our world. You know, with the game Control, which still waiting on Control 2. Very, very excited when that comes out. Remedy is my favorite game developer. Sam Lake is indescribable. He's just a great developer, great writer, genius mind. Very weird and best way. Um, Alan Wake was great, was fun. Definitely, I feel like Remedy really found their stride with that game. It was really like solidified their personality. And I think Quantum Break didn't really capture that same energy, but Control definitely brought it back. So then for Alan Wake 2, Alan Wake 2 is just an experience. It's basically two campaigns side by side, switch between two characters, switch between Alan himself, Saga Anderson, and um, Alan is still trapped in the Upside Down, whereas Saga is back um, at what? How do I not remember what the place is called? All I can think of is Night Springs, which I know is not it's the TV show, but uh, she's at Cauldron Lake called, and basically you're going through the game side by side, and they added so much more, like kind of an open world element to it. There's some like side objectives, some cool side areas, and puzzles, more like progression. They really expanded it in a big, really cool way and tied it in a lot more with Troll. My two favorite things about Alan Wake 2, um, one of them, of course, is Ahti, the magical janitor god. It appears every man when Ahti appeared in that game. When when you're playing as Saga and you go to Watery, go into like the community center, and Ahti's just up on stage singing, just like it broke me, man. Oh, that guy, that's such a great character. Ahti is like, favorite. And then, of course, probably the best part of Alan Wake 2 is the musical number. They just decided Sam Lake Sam Lake just decided let's take this survival horror game, really like dark, twisted game, and just throw a musical note right in the middle, and it's perfect. I have that song on play on one of my music playlists in my rock play. I have four playlists: rock, punk, the four best genres. It's in my rock playlist. I still listen to it. Still love it. And the fact that they got to perform it at the Game Awards was so cool. But yeah, Remedy are just they're just geniuses. They're just Sam Lake is just he's such a madman. And the DLCs also tied in. It definitely tied in more to Control and tied Quantum Break in. Very odd, did some very odd things, but it still holds that survival horror element to changed. And it's a little more difficult combat, well, in my opinion. But you definitely see how how game development stuff has changed over the years between Alan 2. Alan Wake 1 was very much a product of its era, and Alan Wake 2 is very much a product of its era. Actually, I've just grown to love the series so much. See what else it does. But yeah, that's all I got for today. Those are my favorite horror games, favorite survival horror games, at least the ones that I remember. I know there's a lot of games out there that I haven't mentioned, and probably a lot of games that I haven't played, but those are the ones that called out to me the most that I really want to highlight, especially some of the lesser known ones. I really like drawing attention to things people don't know about. Yeah, that being said, I'm very excited for Resident Evil 9 coming out in a couple days. It really comes out one day because it's like four. But yeah, maybe I'll talk about that in a upcoming video. Thinking about doing some gameplays soon on the channel. Thinking about playing through a couple games that I have on this Dink laptop. But until then, I've been the Snoopy Emu. Thank you for listening. Listening. Oh, oh boy, I need to go. Thank you for listening to me ramble and rant, give lunatic about spooky horror games. And I hope to see you all next video of whatever I'm